Now friends, in this last quarter on gravitation, we are going to deal with some basic vector analysis which is very much required, I believe, for discussion of Gauss law and gravitation. There I am going to refer a Gauss divergence theorem to make two arbs and make a integral version and differential version of the Gauss law. Gravity also changes with latitude. That discussion also will continue in this lecture, and finally we shall find out a empirical formula for gravity inside the spherical shell. Now in vector analysis, I would like to emphasize that if we represent a point P in xy plane where the coordinates of the point P are x1 and y1, then one has to travel x1 distance along x-axis and y1 distance parallel to y-axis to reach to the point P in the xy plane. Now it can be looked upon as, you imagine a line x equal to x1, this is the dotted line, which all points on this line will have coordinate x1 only. So locus of all points for which x is equal to x1 is this line, which is parallel to y-axis and intersects x-axis at x1. Similarly, the horizontal line y equal to y1 intersects y-axis at y1, and y coordinate for all points on this line is y1. Now this can be looked upon as two coordinates represented in the polar form, wherein we are talking about the distance of the point from origin, and that distance we are calling as ρ1. Locus of all points for which the distance from center remains constant will be a circle, and on this circle we will have infinite number of points. They are at fixed distance from origin. Now if we draw position vector of point P in our discussion, then the position vector of the point P makes an angle phi1 with x-axis. Now a circle of radius ρ1 and a line with angle phi1 will make an intersection and will represent the same point, and here we have coordinates of that point as ρ1 phi1. So we can write transformation equation from geometry. Cosine of phi1 will be adjacent side, which is x1, upon hypotenuse, which is ρ1. So we can write x1 is equal to ρ1 cos phi1. Similarly, y1 is equal to ρ1 sin phi1. So if you know ρ1 and phi1, you can work out x1 and y1, and vice versa should also be true. If you know x1 and y1, then ρ1 will be under root of x1 square plus y1 square. You can pick up a piece of paper and just work this out. You must have done it in your earlier class. And if you take ratio of second and first, then phi1 will be tan inverse of y1 upon x1. Now as regards to unit vectors in polar coordinate system, it is not as simple as we are having in Cartesian coordinate system. In Cartesian coordinates, we have unit vector along x-axis directed towards increasing x, and it is perpendicular to all lines x equal to constant. So this is a line x equal to constant. So unit vector along x-axis is directed perpendicular to that, and similar is the case for y-axis. The unit vector along y-axis is directed towards increasing y and perpendicular to any line y equal to constant. Similarly, we shall define unit vector along ρ, and that we are calling a ρ cap. This ρ should be in suffix. It is directed towards increasing ρ always. So a ρ bar is pointing always outwards from origin, and it is always normal to the circle at the point of definition. So normal to the circle means it is normal to ρ equal to constant. So ρ equal to constant is a circle. So at this point, if you try to define a ρ cap, it will be directed radially outward and normal to the circle. Similarly, if you try to define it at some other point, so it will be directed radially outward and perpendicular to the circle. Similarly, unit vector a phi cap will be directed towards increasing phi. So phi can increase from 0 to 2 pi, that is the limit to which phi can increase. Unlike in Cartesian coordinates, x can roll from minus infinity to plus infinity and y also can roll from minus infinity to plus infinity. Here phi is rolling from 0 to 2 pi, that will make a complete description of xy plane, and a phi cap is directed towards increasing phi, so at this point it will be towards increasing phi, and here at this point it will be towards increasing phi, and it is always normal to the line phi equal to constant. So phi equal to constant is this line and a phi cap is normal to that. So it forms an orthogonal system. Now you can define area by two pairs of line. Say this is x equal to x1, x equal to x2, y equal to y1, y equal to y2. So that will have a overlapping common area as shaded in this diagram. Whereas in polar coordinate system, you can have a circle of radius r equal to r1, circle of radius r equal to r2, where r2 is more than r1, and you have another set of lines described by phi equal to phi1 and phi equal to phi2. So this makes an elemental area in polar coordinate system. So here we can discuss quickly a problem of estimating area between the angle phi equal to pi by 4 to 3 pi by 4 for radius rolling from some values. Let us suppose that rho is rolling from 5 meter to 10 meter, and phi, as I said, you can work out d rho into rho d phi. So this is properly written as rho d phi. This is because in polar coordinates we have variables rho and phi. Rho has dimensions of length, phi does not have. So rho multiplied by d phi will represent the arc length. This arc length we are talking about, this is the arc length at rho equal to rho 1, this is the arc length at rho equal to rho 2. So rho into d phi will represent the arc length. So in all, for area you have to have product of two lengths. So rho into rho d phi we can write as rho d phi, and then you have to operate integration. Integration rho d rho will be rho square by 2 and integration d phi will be phi. So you have to substitute the limits accordingly and work out for area. In polar coordinate system, we are interested in finding area of a circle where rho is rolling from 0 to r and phi will have complete description for a circle from 0 to 2 pi, and this integration will be rho square by 2 into phi, and upper limit minus lower limit, this will be 2 pi minus 0 multiplied by r square by 2. So in all it will be pi r square. This is how area of a circle is estimated. Before discussing spherical coordinate system, we need to discuss one more coordinate system which is known as cylindrical coordinate system. In this coordinate system, we have same definition of rho and phi. In addition to that, we are introducing the third coordinate z. Now, to reach up to point P x1, y1, z1, one needs to travel x1 distance along x-axis, y1 distance parallel to y-axis, and z1 distance parallel to z-axis. Now, in other words, if you project this point P into xy plane, the point is named as P dash, having coordinates x1, y1, 0. Just we are dropping the point P from z1 location to xy plane. Now in the xy plane we have same definitions as we have discussed in polar coordinate system. Herein x1 will be rho 1 cos of phi 1, x2 y2 will be rho 1 sin of phi 1, and z1 is the same. Now here the three mutually perpendicular unit vectors will be a rho cap, a phi cap, and a z cap. So rho equal to rho 1, instead of a circle, when it is extended along z direction, it will be a cylinder. Phi equal to phi 1, which was a line in polar coordinate system, it will be extended along z axis to form a plane which is appearing here. And z equal to z1 is the usual plane that we discuss normally, parallel to xy plane. Now, the common intersection of a cylinder, a plane described by phi equal to phi 1, and another plane described by z equal to z1 has only one common point, and that point P is referred as rho phi z. Obviously, it is intersection of these three surfaces, and the unit vectors a phi, a rho, a phi and a z, they have the similar definition. As I said, x1 is equal to rho 1 cos of phi 1, y1 is equal to rho 1 sin of phi 1, and z1 is equal to z1. That is the third transformation equation. The inverse transformation equation, first two are identical, and the third one is also similar to that. The unit vector along rho will be directed always towards increasing rho. It is normal to cylindrical surface at the point of definition. That cylindrical surface at point P1 we define rho equal to rho 1. A phi cap is a unit vector which is directed in increasing phi direction. It is normal to the surface, this time the surface is plane. It is normal to the surface at a point of definition, and it is tangential to cylindrical surface at the point of definition. The above property suggests that the two vectors a rho and a phi, they are mutually perpendicular, and a z cap is directed towards increasing z, and it is normal to the surface z equal to constant, and it is normal to a phi cap and a rho cap also. Now, depending upon their angles, we can have relationship between their unit vectors. The cyclic cross product a rho a phi is 1, a phi a z is 1, and a z a rho is 1. If the order is reversed in the cross product, the result will be -1. The dot product of a rho with a rho will be 1, because angle between them at the same point of definition will be 0, and cos of 0 is 1. Otherwise, in the cross connection, the dot product vanishes, because the angle between rho and phi, phi and z, z and rho, mutually perpendicular, pi by 2. Now, in cylindrical coordinate system, we have variables rho, phi and z. The infinitesimal changes we can consider d rho, d phi, dz. But here, the middle coordinate is not representing length, it is representing change in the angle. So when you multiply change in angle to the radius vector rho, that makes arc length rho d phi. So d rho, rho d phi and dz are three length elements in cylindrical coordinate systems. You can find it similar to dx, dy, dz, and then the magnitude of length dl will be under root of dx square plus dy square plus dz square. Similarly, in cylindrical coordinates, dl bar magnitude will be under root of d rho square plus rho d phi square plus dz square. And the vector length in cylindrical coordinates can be represented by d rho a rho cap plus rho d phi a phi cap plus dz a z cap. In Cartesian coordinate system, we represent volume of a cube or a parallelepiped as dx into dy into dz equal to dv. So if you like to find complete volume V, you have to operate triple integration dv, and that will be equal to triple integration dx, dy, dz, where x rolls from x1 to x2 and so on for y and z coordinates, and length into breadth into height. That will make a sensible equation for volume of a parallelepiped. In case of cylindrical coordinates, the volume element is little different. You have to obtain two cylinders, one of radius rho equal to rho 1, another of radius rho equal to rho 2, and the cylindrical shell between two is the concerned volume. Out of that, you have to consider the one cut by phi equal to phi 1 line and phi equal to phi 2 line. For example, phi equal to phi 1 here shown is pi by 3 and phi equal to phi 2 is pi by 2. And then z equal to 0 and z equal to h, say a constant number. So that will work out to be the volume in cylindrical coordinates. So if you like to write in form of equation, it will be d rho, rho d phi dz, which we write as rho d phi dz, where rho rolls from rho 1 to rho 2, phi rolls from phi 1 to phi 2, and z rolls from z1 to z2, so that integration rho d rho will be rho square by 2. You have to operate upper limit minus lower limit as usual, and integration d phi will be phi. You have to operate limits phi 2 minus phi 1. Similarly, integration dz will be z. The limits are from z1 to z2, so upper limit minus lower limit you have to operate again. For a complete volume of a cylinder, let rho rolls from 0 to r. Phi rolls completely to describe a cylinder from 0 to 2 pi, and z rolls from 0 to L, so that we have integration rho square by 2 phi z. And if you substitute limits appropriately, it will be r square upon 2 multiplied by 2 pi multiplied by L. That will amount to be pi r square L. Now we are in position to discuss spherical coordinate system, which we are going to use for discussion of Gauss law, and the Gauss divergence theorem we are going to refer with the spherical coordinate system. And the symmetry in the spherical coordinate system is of advantage. That is why we have reached up to this coordinate system. A point in space p x1 y1 z1 can be reached when one travels x1 distance along x-axis, y1 distance parallel to y-axis, and z1 distance parallel to z-axis. In other words, this point P is a common point of intersection of three planes, x equal to x1, y equal to y1, and z equal to z1. Now, the another way of representing this point is, let us suppose that the point is at distance r1 from origin. So locus of all those points which are at fixed distance r1 from origin will be a sphere, and that is why we are calling this coordinate system as spherical coordinate system. If you draw a position vector of this point P, which is at distance r1 from origin, then it makes angle theta 1 with z axis. So theta 1 is another coordinate involved. If you project this point into xy plane, it will be p dash x1 y1 0. So z coordinate is made 0. Now the position vector of this p dash makes an angle phi 1 with x-axis. So these are the three coordinates r, theta and phi. Now the x coordinate of this point p dash is x1, which is r1 sin theta 1 cos phi 1, and y coordinate y1 is equal to r1 sin theta 1 sin phi 1. This distance, perpendicular distance of the point P from z axis, is r1 sin theta 1, and this is the same distance being tracked here. So if you consider sine of theta 1, this angle is pi by 2. Front side upon hypotenuse will be sine of theta, and therefore this perpendicular distance will be r1 sine of theta 1. Now at the point P, which is a point of definition, it is obtained by intersection of three surfaces. The first surface, as I said, is locus of all points which are at constant distance from origin, is a sphere as shown here. The another coordinate is theta 1, that is the position vector of this point P makes an angle theta 1 with z axis. So locus of all those points which makes an angle theta 1 with z axis will be a cone. It will be a circle of radius r1 sin theta 1, and the complete locus of such position vectors will be a cone. So second surface is represented by a cone theta equal to theta 1, and when theta is equal to 0, it will be, the cone will be merging to z axis. Theta equal to pi by 2, it will flatten to represent xy plane, and theta greater than pi by 2 will open this cone downwards, and at theta equal to pi, it will merge into the negative z axis. The third coordinate phi 1 is the same definition that we have considered in polar coordinate system, but when we consider three-dimensional version like in cylindrical coordinate system, it represents a plane which is formed by this dotted line and this finely dotted line, again this line and your z axis. So it's an angular plane that makes phi 1 angle with xz plane. Now AR cap is a unit vector directed along this direction, in which this AR cap is perpendicular to the surface r equal to r1. Then we shall formally go through the different points that this AR cap exhibits. It's a unit vector directed in the direction of increasing r. It is normal to the surface r equal to constant at the point of definition, and it lies on the cone theta equal to theta 1 at the point of definition, and also it is found that it lies on the plane phi equal to phi 1. The unit vector a theta cap is directed towards increasing theta at the point of definition, and it is normal to the cone theta equal to theta 1 at the point of definition. As the point of definition changes, this unit vectors undergo change in the direction. Therefore, while differentiating and integrating, we cannot treat these unit vectors to be constant like we do for ax cap, ay cap and az cap. It is tangent to the surface r equal to r1, and it lies in the plane phi equal to phi 1. I would advise students to refer to the figure and realize these things. A phi cap is a unit vector directed towards increasing. A phi cap is a unit vector directed in the direction of increasing phi. It is normal to the surface phi equal to phi 1 at the point of definition, and it is tangential to spherical surface at the point of definition. Also it is tangential to the conical surface at the point of definition. So that these three unit vectors AR, A theta and A phi, they make mutually perpendicular system at the point of definition, and therefore as the angle between them is unity, AR cross A theta is equal to 1, and if you reverse the order it will be minus 1, and so on. And dot product of AR with AR will be unity, and so on for others. Cross dot products, that is AR dot A theta, will be 0 because they are mutually perpendicular, and similar relationship holds for other possible combinations. Now the line element in spherical coordinates, we shall refer to Cartesian coordinate first. Dx, dy, dz are the elemental length elements, and in case of spherical coordinates, if we differentiate the coordinates, we have dr, d theta, d phi. Dr is a length element, but d theta is not, and d phi is also not. Both are last two, both are angular variations. So when they are properly multiplied by the concerned radius vector, they form arc length. So r d theta forms a arc length in reference to the cone, and r sin theta d phi, r sin theta is a component I have just shown you in the diagram. when it is multiplied by d phi, it will form an arc length in xy plane as I have shown in the earlier diagram. So the length element magnitude can be represented by under root of dr square plus r d theta whole square plus r sin theta d phi whole square. So dl bar can be expressed as dr ar cap plus r d theta a theta cap plus r sin theta d phi a phi cap. This is the vector representation of length. This is magnitude of length between 2 points which are subjected by dr d theta d phi variations, and it is on the spherical surface. Now if you like to find volume element in spherical coordinate system, you have to consider two spheres, one of radius r1, another of radius r2. One cone of theta equal to theta 1, another cone theta equal to theta 2, and then two planes, say phi equal to phi 1. This time in this plot I have shown xz plane, that is phi equal to 0, and phi equal to pi by 2 is shown by yz plane. So the concerned closed volume enclosed by 6 surfaces is appearing on the screen, which is volume element in spherical coordinate system. So here this diagram reveals a better version of the arc lengths concerned, and if you consider d theta variation from two cones theta equal to theta 1 and theta equal to theta 2, then if r is the distance from the center, this arc length r d theta is appearing here and the another part is appearing here, r d theta. R sin theta d phi is this length at higher radius, and r sin theta d phi is another arc length at lower radius, and dr variation is this one which is appearing at 4 locations. Now one has to multiply r d theta, r sin theta d phi and dr, these quantities, to obtain volume element, and if you properly write the product of these 3 quantities, it will be r square dr sin theta d theta d phi. So this offers a more closed look at the diagram. Volume element in spherical coordinate system can be raised in the similar fashion: dr r d theta into r sin theta d phi, where the variations over respective variables is duly considered, and integration r square dr will be r cube upon 3. Integration sin theta d theta is minus cos theta, and integration d phi is simply phi. So substituting upper limit minus lower limit, we can obtain the requisite volume enclosed. And if we consider volume of a complete sphere, then the inner sphere we shall set to r equal to 0, outer sphere we shall consider r equal to capital R. Theta can roll from 0 to pi, as I have said, and phi can roll from 0 to 2 pi, and if you work out this integration and substitute limits, you can obtain the quantity 4 by 3 pi r cube. In Cartesian coordinate system, the del bar operator or nebula operator can be written as unit vector along x-axis times partial differentiation with respect to x variable plus unit vector along y into partial derivative with respect to second variable, that is y, plus unit vector along third axis into partial differentiation with respect to the third variable. So this is directional derivative. In spherical coordinate system, it is written as ar cap into partial derivative with respect to r plus a theta cap into 1 upon r partial derivative with respect to theta plus a phi cap into 1 upon r sin theta into partial derivative with respect to phi. So in case of x, y, z, the multiplying factors are 1, 1, 1. Therefore, nothing is appearing seriously in this equation. Whereas in case of r, the multiplying factor is 1. In case of theta, the multiplying factor was r times theta. So we are considering here reciprocal of that multiplying factor. and in case of phi the multiplying factor was r sin theta, and here we are considering the reciprocal of the same quantity and then applying differentiation with respect to the concerned variable into unit vector along that particular variable. Similarly, del square operator can be expressed as appearing here. When you operate del bar dot del bar, it will offer you del square by del x square plus del square by del y square plus del square by del z square. This is operated on some scalar function so that the Laplacian operator can be estimated. In spherical coordinate system, the Laplacian operator appears as on the screen. When you operate del bar dot on itself and set ar dot ar is equal to 1, ar dot a theta and ar dot a phi is equal to 0 and so on, only a theta dot a theta and a phi dot a phi will exist. Other 6 components will disappear and only 3 components will appear. However, the potential we are going to represent phi, which was earlier V, is equal to minus gm upon r. It is an interesting point at this point of time to be cited, as phi does not depend upon theta and phi. So it is independent of theta and phi. So while differentiation, you can consider only the first term ar cap into partial derivative with respect to r, and in case of Nebula operator, del square operator, you can consider it 1 upon r square partial derivative with respect to r operated on r square into del r. So these are the only components of our concern, and we shall go ahead with this elemental operation. So I would like students to note down these operators. Now F bar is equal to minus gm upon r square. This is the gravitational force, and it can be equated to mg bar, where g bar is acceleration due to gravity and m is the mass of the object which is falling under gravity. The gravitational force is directed towards the center of the gravitating object. If we consider Earth to be the gravitating object and origin of the spherical coordinate system at the center of the Earth, if we set, then ar cap is a direction which is directed outwards and gravitational force is in the opposite direction. So minus sign has got explanation here that it is representing minus ar cap direction. Here you can work out g bar, that is acceleration due to gravity vector, can be represented as minus gm upon r square ar cap, and the gravitational potential phi, as we have seen in earlier lectures, it can be written as phi equal to minus gm upon r square. Now we shall operate del bar operator on phi, that is equal to ar cap into partial derivative with respect to r of phi, and phi is being substituted here, and derivative of 1 by r will be minus 1 by r square. So this minus sign is sucked and we are left with gm upon r square ar cap. This is minus g bar. So grad of phi is equal to minus g bar. So here I am writing in vector form, g bar is equal to minus grad phi. The earlier version that we have discussed is E equal to minus grad V. So it is similar to that. Now if we operate del bar operator once again on this equation, then del bar dot g bar is equal to minus del square phi, and if we want to compute the actual value of del square phi, we should operate del bar operator on both sides for this equation, and del square phi, as the definition goes here, this equation is appearing in the recap, 1 upon r square partial derivative with respect to r of r square into partial derivative with respect to r operated on minus gm upon r. So I would advise students to compute this by actually using a piece of paper and pencil, and you will be realizing that derivative of minus 1 upon r with respect to r will be 1 by r square, and we are left here in the bracket with a term r square into gm upon r square. Now del square phi is equal to 1 upon r square partial derivative with respect to r. So here r square is cancelled, and we should not treat m to be constant in the sense that you can represent it in terms of density, and we prefer to say that density is constant and m is replaced by rho 4 by 3 pi r cube. Now the differentiation with respect to r is to be operated, and this offers us thrice r square, so 3 is cancelled. We are left with 4 pi g rho, and r square is cancelled with this r square, so we are left with del square phi equal to 4 pi g rho. This is known as the differential form of Gauss law. And if you like to substitute this del square phi, it is minus divergence of g bar. So del bar dot g bar is also known as divergence of g. It represents the degree with which the field spreads, and this being with a minus sign, it represents the degree with which the field converges to a point, and that convergence is appearing to be 4 pi g rho. Now again we are going back to the same equations, same set of equations which I have discussed in the earlier slide, and this time we are going to explore the another component, and for that component ds bar is the surface area of spherical surface, and the direction associated with the spherical surface is represented by a unit vector perpendicular to the spherical surface, and it is product of two quantities. That is, in Cartesian coordinates we have displacement over variables as dx, dy, dz. In case of spherical coordinates it is dr, d theta, d phi, but d theta, d phi, they are angles. When they are multiplied by appropriate radius vector, they deliver the curved track. So in this second case r d theta is the concerned arc, and in the third case r sin theta d phi is the concerned arc. Now to obtain different surfaces in Cartesian coordinates we have dx into dy, dy into dz, dx into dz. So when we consider dx into dy, the unit vector perpendicular to that is az cap, and so on. Similarly, in case of spherical coordinates, we can take product of dr r d theta, dr r sin theta, r d theta into r sin theta d phi, and the perpendicular unit vectors are properly chosen. So as we are considering quantity concerning r and theta, the perpendicular unit vector is phi associated with phi coordinate, and so on. So when we are talking about the surface of a sphere, dr variation is not of concern, so we are left with this option r d theta into r sin theta d phi. So if you properly write this, it will be r square sin theta d phi. So this quantity is being considered here into unit vector ar cap. If you like to find volume element, we have just now we have done that previous part. dv is equal to r sin theta, r square sin theta dr d theta d phi is the volume element. So volume element and concerned surface element is being highlighted here. Now considering the concerned equations of our interest, we can now go ahead. This is the statement of Gauss divergence theorem. The normal component of any vector field over the closed surface, normal component to the surface, is an integrand, and when one performs surface integration over that, it is equal to volume integration of divergence of that field. So this is what is Gauss law, and this time the concerned vector field is acceleration due to gravity, and now we shall work out both the sides of Gauss divergence theorem. Now double integration over closed surface which encloses a volume, and here this is volume integration. Now divergence of G we have already calculated, that is equal to minus 4 pi G rho. So we can substitute it there, and that is equal to minus 4 pi G into volume integration rho dV. This will represent complete mass of the system. So double integration over closed surface when the surface encloses some volume operated on G bar dot ds bar is equal to minus 4 pi Gm. This is known as the integral form of Gauss law for gravitation. Now we are quite acquainted with del square phi equal to 4 pi G rho. This is the differential form, and for comparison you can have a look at both the equations at a time. Now we shall work out the surface integration part, and surface integration element ds bar is displayed here. Now I am interested in finding G bar dot ds bar. When G bar is known to us, AR dot AR will be 1 and will be left with minus Gm sin theta d theta d phi. We can operate integration over the closed surface and will be left with minus Gm integration sin theta d theta into integration d phi. The first integration rolls over 0 to pi, the complete possible variation of theta, and complete possible variation of phi, that is 0 to 2 pi. And if we work out this integration, we will be left with minus 4 pi Gm. So double integration G bar dot ds bar, if we find out by solving the surface integration, it again amounts to the same value, minus 4 pi Gm. Now we are in position to discuss gravity with latitude. This is the very familiar diagram to all of us since our school days. The thick line, horizontal line, which forms a great circle is known as equator, and this forms a great circle with reference to the spherical earth. This is 20 degree latitude line, 40 degree, 60 degree, 80 degree and 90 degree. So these horizontal lines appearing are latitudes and vertical lines are longitudes. Now as Earth is revolving about an axis passing through north-south pole, the rotational motion of the point on the Earth about the axis has different contribution as its distance from the axis of rotation changes. At the equator, the axis of rotation is at capital R, that is radius of the Earth. However, as one goes up along these latitude lines, the distance of rotation about the axis goes on decreasing, and it is 0 at North Pole and South Pole. This contributes to the change in gravity, and here we are going to formulate an equation which tells you gravity with latitude. Now acceleration due to gravity, we normally consider G equal to 9.8 meter per second square for all numerical purposes. Because of the spin motion of Earth, the centrifugal force m omega square r plays an important role, where r has an important role that depends upon the latitude. Acceleration due to gravity, F is equal to m into g. They are added, the centrifugal force and acceleration due to gravity, they are added by parallelogram law, which results into a new value along the resultant, that is known as G effective, that is effective gravity at that latitude. For this purpose, we shall consider that mg is acting along PO. O is the center of Earth towards which the acceleration due to gravity is directed, and at point P, the distance from the axis is small r, which can be written as r cos theta, where theta is this angle. Because of the spin motion, the centrifugal force is acting along PA, and the gravity is acting along PO. The resultant of these two will be effective gravity. So in terms of forces we are writing, the effective gravitational force will be m into g effective, which is acting along PB. Now from the geometry we have PB bar is equal to PO bar plus OB bar, and PB square, magnitude PB square is equal to magnitude PO square plus magnitude OB square plus twice magnitude PO into magnitude OB into cos of pi minus theta. Now substituting respective values, PB we are finding effective gravitational force which is along the resultant, and that is PB vector. Mg effective is equal to mg effective square is equal to mg whole square plus m omega square r cos theta whole square plus twice mg into m omega square r cos of theta into cos of pi minus theta. So we need to simplify this equation, and the simplification offers us g effective is equal to g minus r times omega square into cos square theta. Now if we calculate omega for earth, it will be, omega will be 2 pi upon capital T. So value of pi is 3.14 and capital T is 24 hours. In seconds it will be 24 into 60 into 60. So this number tells you omega in second inverse. Radius of earth is 64,000 kilometers. So by substituting these values we can obtain the equation G effective is equal to, so here I am substituting precise value of G, 9.8169 minus 0.03384 into cos square theta. Now the whole story depends upon theta. At the equator theta is equal to 0 and cos of 0 will be 1. So here we are subtracting maximum value, that is r omega square, and gravity is minimum. So as one travels towards pole, the effective gravity increases up to 9.816. So this graph gives a more closer look at the numerical values. Here we are going to North Pole, and this direction we are going to South Pole. This table depicts different values of theta and G effective. Now we are in position to learn gravitational self-energy of a solid sphere. Let us suppose that we have Earth under consideration and we are going to find the gravitational self-energy for Earth. Work done is nothing but the potential energy of a system, which is minus gmm upon r. Elemental small amount of work done dW is equal to minus gm upon r times dm. Here we are going to consider a sphere and a spherical shell of thickness dr we are considering in red color out of the complete sphere, and the inner portion with blue color we are considering mass m. Now dW is equal to minus gm sphere into m shell upon r, where capital M represents mass of the sphere, which is blue in color, and small m shell represents mass of the object, which is in red color, which is in fact a spherical shell. Now m sphere is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cube into r. So 4 by 3 pi r cube is the volume of the sphere of radius r, and rho is the density, which is a constant quantity we are considering in our all discussions. Whereas m shell, mass of the shell, is 4 pi r square, that is radius of inner sphere at red boundary, multiplied by dr, thickness of the shell, multiplied by rho. Now dW, which is minus g upon r, m sphere into m shell, we shall substitute the values, and we shall simplify the equation. dW, work done or potential energy of the system will be minus G by 3 4 pi rho whole square r to the power 4 dr. Total work done we can find by integrating the spherical shell to roll from r equal to 0 up to capital R, which is the radius of earth. If we substitute the value of dW, we can obtain that W is equal to minus G by 3 4 pi rho whole square integration r to the power 4 dr. Integration r to the power 4 will be r to the power 5 upon 5. Upper limit minus lower limit. We can substitute and simplify the equation. We can replace rho as m upon 4 pi r cube by 3. So here m is mass of earth and capital R is radius of earth. In that context, we have considered rho to be constant throughout, and with that presumption we can write this equation, and further simplification offers us W is equal to minus 3 by 5 times Gm square upon R, and this is the equation for self energy of a sphere made up of uniform density of solid material. Now using this formula we can find gravitational self energy of earth. We can substitute m equal to 6 into 10 power 24 kg and r equal to 64,000 kilometers can be converted into meters. Substituting the value of g, we can obtain that gravitational self energy of earth is 2.25 into 10 power 32 joules. Now quickly we shall rush through a numerical to find intensity potential gravitational field of a solid sphere of 100 kg mass and 10 cm radius at 1 10 cm, 2 20 cm and 3 5 cm from its center. So P1, P2, P3 I have located accordingly, and the formula for E is equal to minus Gm upon R square, and for potential V is equal to minus Gm upon R. And when you substitute the values after proper conversion, we obtain E is equal to minus 6.67 into 10 power minus 7, and E is equal to and V is equal to minus 6.67 into 10 power minus 8 joule per kg. Similarly, at R equal to 20 centimeters, it will be 0.2 meters, and value of field intensity and potential appears on the screen. To find intensity inside the surface of the sphere, R equal to 5 centimeter, that is 0.05 meters, capital R equal to 0.1 meter. The formula is E equal to minus Gm upon R cube into small r, and V is equal to minus Gm upon twice R cube inside bracket 3R square minus small r square. By substituting these values, we can obtain intensity and potential. Now we shall deal with the rigorous equation of finding gravity inside the spherical shell, wherein I would like to pass a remark that inside the gravity goes on decreasing and at the center it vanishes. We shall empirically derive the formula for that. Let us consider a mass m of a spherical shell of radius r. Here in the diagram it is depicted that the spherical shell is shown by a thick line, and the thickness of the line you can imagine dr, capital R to be radius of the spherical shell. The density in terms of area, sigma, is equal to m upon 4 pi r square, where 4 pi r square represents the area of the spherical shell of radius capital R. Let r d theta represents the width of the strip. Now let us consider a small mass m being present inside the spherical shell, and we are considering the shell element of the strip as appearing in the diagram. R sin theta is the radius of the spherical shell, where theta is the angle described by the shell element with respect to a vertical axis. Alpha represents the angle of the line from small m up to the strip. S represents distance between small m and the strip. Here R represents the distance of small m from origin or center of mass of the gravitating object. R d theta, as I said, is width of the strip, and these angles are now quite clear. So dm, now how that area of the strip has been worked out, I will explain it quickly. If we are in Cartesian coordinates, if we take product of two quantities, that becomes area. And now on the spherical shell of radius r, now I am flipping here to small r from capital R, and r d theta into r sin theta d phi, that will describe the area. Our spherical shell being of radius capital R, the elemental strip area is r d theta into r sin theta d phi. The complete area of the strip will be r d theta into r sin theta. Here I am replacing d phi by 2 pi. So phi is making a complete orientation about itself, and it will be 2 pi r square sin theta d phi. Now the concerned small mass dm is equal to area into areal density, that is equal to 2 pi r square sin theta phi. The small elemental mass is equal to area, small elemental area into sigma, that is areal density, that is equal to 2 pi r square sin theta d theta into sigma. All perpendicular to r components in the diagram of gravity cancel due to symmetry, whereas along components, that is components present along r, they are added. So the gravitational force along r component will be represented by dm cos alpha. Now force is equal to gmm upon r square. So here we are using the formula df, small amount of force because of the elemental part of the strip, gm dm cos alpha upon s square, s being the distance between two. Substituting dm from above, we have gm 2 pi r square sin theta d theta sigma cos of alpha upon s square. Now here df we have written as gm dm cos alpha upon s square. After substitution we encounter this type of equation, and cosine rule offers us these two equations: s square equal to r square plus r square minus 2rr cos theta, and r square equal to r square s square minus 2rs cos alpha. Now we have bunch of equations to be explored together. Differentiating this cosine formula, we have derivative of s square as 2s ds equal to, this being constant, the derivative will be 0, and we have to operate minus 2r also as a constant, and derivative of cos theta we have to obtain. Similarly here we are rearranging this equation to obtain cos of alpha. So cos of alpha is equal to r square s square minus capital R square upon 2rs, and here the derivative of cos theta is sin theta d theta with a minus sign, that will suck this negative sign, and we can write sin theta d theta equal to s ds upon rr, and we can substitute sin theta d theta in the previous equation and cos of alpha also. By substitution we get this equation. I would advise students to pick up a piece of paper and do it on their own, and we can rearrange this equation in the form gm pi r sigma upon r square into r square plus s square minus capital R square upon s square ds. Now we need to integrate this equation for s rolling from capital R minus small r to capital R plus small r. The derivative of this quantity being s minus r square upon s, you have to operate upper limit minus lower limit. After Doing so, we obtained this equation. We have substituted S is equal to R plus R, and then here in the denominator R plus R minus lower limit capital R minus R, capital R minus R in the denominator. So we can simplify this equation and this amounts to 0. So gravitational force inside the spherical shell is not prevailing at all. Thank you for your patient listening.